Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and back for a return visit, a filmmaker who has, I don't know, a half a dozen or more DVDs. It's the True Legend series. He's got his stuff. I don't have them all. I just have a few. He is a published author. I think he's got a dozen books under his belt, and his books are like this, like this, weighs like a monster box. Some of the many well documented and sourced books that he has. He is a radio personality and legend for decades. He is Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com, also radio fame. Steve Quayle, thanks for joining us today on usawatchdog.com.
Well, great. What a wonderful time to get together, and with so much things going on, and specifically the earth quaking, the volcanoes going off, all of the different geologic and also ocean events taking place are a real heads up, I think, to the lateness of the hour. Sometimes we get too focused, I believe, on the political, and we forget to see the big picture. And the big picture is earthquakes are changing the face of the planet. The volcanoes are changing the temperature of the earth, and it all comes to the point where we're going to be facing famine of a geologically induced nature that most people don't even have on their radar yet.
And you have a big conference coming up October 16th and 17th. It's a virtual conference, Final Warnings, Brace for Impact. And one of the things in your conference that you're going to be talking about are all these volcanoes, triplets, stacking volcanoes. And you're saying that it's never been done before, and the powers that be are trying to shut this up with academia that knows this is unlike anything ever before. Explain the stacking and volcanoes and the phenomenon that's never happened before that they're covering up.
Well, first of all, stacking volcano or a triplet, since July, there have been, and they're all in the neighborhood of 6.8 and above, even the earthquakes hitting 7.2 and 7.3 in Papua New Guinea. So here's what I want people to understand. When I'm talking about stacking quakes, I'm not talking about aftershocks or secondary reverberations, okay? I'm talking about 4 instances in Papua New Guinea, in the Philippines, in Chile, and recently on the in the North Atlantic Ocean on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This means there are 3 specific earthquakes being generated within 0.1 or 0.2 of the magnitudes. And that's really significant because with every earthquake, it doesn't stay localized. So these earthquakes, and these are major quakes, these aren't like little tremors, like 1.1s or 1.2s. These are all major. And what's interesting about this, as the earth quakes, the earth shakes, you're looking at this happening primarily on the Ring of Fire until 3 days ago. I'm sorry, it was September 18th. When the Mid-Atlantic Ridge started having the multiple, and I'm calling them major quakes. And in my terminology, I want to see 7s to be considered, in my book, a major quake. Now, obviously, the depth of the quake and the population density affects many times the damage that's done by the quakes. But what's fascinating, in concurrence with this, we've got the giant earthquakes taking place, stacking, in triplets, okay? It's one thing to get 2 quakes pretty close together, but it's another thing to have 3. And I started tracking it in July. So let's go to the
tell me about, I want to back up just a little bit. What's so important about the Atlantic quakes?
The Atlantic quakes, again, for the first time on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, there have been 3 earthquakes. I'll just tell you what they were. There were 2 6.8s and 1 6.9. Now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is the one that basically intersects. It goes, pretty much all the way from southern Iceland all the way down into, just a little bit above the Antarctic. And then you get into the Antarctic Ridge and other ridges. But what I'm trying to get across today, I think this is critical, is the situation with the earthquakes and coupled with the underwater volcanoes that are heating the ocean's temperature, which affects the weather and affects growing season, affects climate. And now we've got some of the most displaced weather events taking place. And you can attribute it to, by the way, there are 10 million undersea volcanoes, which are called seamounts. When I did my film Cascadia, which we talked about on a past show, I won't revisit that, but there is the axial seamount, a major volcano off the coast of Oregon, a couple hundred miles into the Pacific West, is still having geothermal activity. So the point that most people don't understand is they don't understand the linkage between earthquakes and volcanoes. Earthquakes usually are predecessors, or there are pre-warning to major volcanic explosions. And we're talking today about Ecuador. I sent you the story on Ecuador. Sangay, S-A-N-G-A-Y, if I'm pronouncing it right, had a horrific full-scale volcanic explosion. And as multiple earthquakes are generating megaquakes, and megaquakes are the ones we're talking about that generate or activate, that's a better word, activate the volcanoes, all that ash and sulfur goes up in the upper atmosphere, and it recirculates the globe sometimes, and also the stratosphere, for 4 years. So we're seeing a global cooling effect. Now, I understand the desert Southwest is, having the extreme heat they're having. And I understand, too, that you had Dane Wigington on talking about geoengineering. So you've already covered that. But again, when people talk about, and let me just get my dig in, when people talk about man-made, global warming, they leave out two most important points. Geoengineering, which is a technology through what are called ionospheric heaters to actually warm the Earth's atmosphere, and also to move different storm systems directed as a weapon. So, there's the Air Force did a real quick thing, 2025 weather is a force multiplier. But here's what happens and this is my opinion, and I believe it's historic. People can no longer think critically and look at cause and effect. When you're seeing growing seasons absolutely interfered with around the world, and then you're also seeing the poisoning of a lot of the fresh water around the world, even beyond China's, dump everything they got in industrial chemicals into the Yangtze. But now you've even got typhoons that are threatening the Three Gorges Dam, the largest dam in the world. And this is what's important. That body of water at the Three Gorges can literally, at some point, trigger a number of earthquakes that can spread out from China. There's 400 to 500 million people downriver from the Three Gorges Dam. There is a lot of scientific papers. I put them on my website, but the greater the pressure of water on any existing faults or on intersecting faults can trigger earthquakes.
Well, and let's talk about the Atlantic. I want to just come back briefly to the Atlantic earthquake. Could Atlantic earthquakes cause a tsunami on the East Coast?
Yes, because people can look up the word Cumbra Vieja, CumbreviejA, and it's one of the volcanoes on the, the Canary Islands. And that's the one that National Geographic and everybody always puts out there, is that when there's a big earthquake on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and this is why it's critical, we're talking about this today, and then that volcano sloughs into the ocean, then you've got the East Coast tsunami. But what people don't understand is the Puerto Rico earthquakes that are taking place right now. And Puerto Rico is having multiple quakes daily, and it's been going on for years. And the thing is that now we've got another problem, that it appears 1/3 of the island of Puerto Rico, the western third, is in the same danger of sloughing if you have a megaquake. And the people are saying, the scientists are saying, it's going to have to be between an 8 and 9 to break the third of Puerto Rico off. Now, listen, this is science. This isn't, a plot from a science fiction show, though I'll say this: science fiction movies, especially like San Andreas, which in my opinion is one of the best predictive Hollywood films telling you what's going to come. But San Andreas is Little League compared to what we're talking about. We're talking about two major ocean events in the Atlantic Ocean, both affecting the East Coast in a very deadly and dangerous way. Talking about deadly and dangerous, 500-mile-an-hour a tsunami, if you will, tidal wave, and going inland for up to 100 miles. And basically, that doesn't bode well if you own a condo in Florida. Now, look, here's the problem with all this stuff. you have to take it in the context of what is going on in a global position. For instance, people, and this is directly related to earthquakes, it's directly related to the shift going on in the Earth's axis right now. If you ever want to know if we're tilted, yeah, we're tilted. And we're getting new problems with that. But let's just stick with the earthquake and volcanoes. The earthquakes are happening in diverse, that means so many different places, even places that they said never had quakes before, or that they've been dormant. That the least expected places are having earthquakes. Places that didn't have any active volcanoes are now experiencing, guess what? They're off-gassing, cracks in the earth, and even the area around Salton Sea, you know, the home of the Ridgecrest earthquake in July 5th, 2019, people are smelling a lot of the, if you will, volcanic emissions, but it's all covered up. So, Greg, you're a newsman. If you were hearing me for the first time and you didn't know a lot of this stuff on your own, you'd start to investigate. But as you, as a professional newsman, were stopped so many times on when you got to the heart of the matter, I think you can understand why the powers that be don't want people to panic. Because when you talk about earthquakes, that affects real estate prices. When you talk about tsunamis, that affects liability. When you talk about telling the truth of the magnitude of these earthquakes and the frequency of them, that makes insurance underwriters really nervous. And just like the fires. So that's what's going on in the background. That's why.
So is academia being muzzled?
Yes. Yes.
How do you know that?
From people who are in the USGS, from scientists, from people in the intel community. And by the way, most of them that talk to me are out of the country. And, you know, they chose, in my opinion, wisely. But I think you can understand something that you can see now with the fires and stuff. You can watch in real time when insurance companies are talking about changing their policies. And a lot of areas that used to be able to have insurance are finding it more difficult. And obviously, you have a mortgage. It's one thing if you own your property free and clear. But if you have a mortgage, you have to have mortgage insurance. That can really affect property values.
What about the scientists being muzzled, though?
Okay, the USGS, okay, I think I gave you the illustration, but maybe I didn't. I was contacted. Here's how I know. I was contacted after an appearance on Coast to Coast through George Norrie. And actually, you think he read it on the air, where some expat scientists were saying, George, thanks, Steve. We're not allowed to say this, okay? People can listen to that broadcast if they belong to, you know, Coast to Coast, where they've got access to it by membership. But in real time, that happened. Then, in addition to that, when I was doing,
what were they not allowed to say? What are they not allowed to say?
They're not allowed to talk about frequency. They're not allowed to talk about depth. They're not allowed to talk about clustering. They're not allowed to talk about cause, and they're not allowed to even mention it because of the forerunning reason. And remember this.
And this has never happened before. This kind of frequency, depth, stacking has never happened before, is what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is most of us weren't around in 1818 when Tambora exploded, or 1883 when Krakatoa, both in Indonesia in the South Pacific, exploded. And the thing is that the frequency and the things that have been able to be measured since those days, they're all pointing to what I would say this. Matthew 24 in the Bible, Jesus talks about it. There's going to be earthquakes in diverse places, men's hearts failing them for fear of looking after those things coming upon the earth. We're so politically focused, I don't think we see the bigger picture. It's kind of like
and
this.
That is?
And the bigger picture is this. Everything we've known as normal and have taken for granted, especially in the area of food production, agriculture, livestock raising, everything is changing, and it's all changing due to the fact of underwater volcanoes affecting the ocean currents, which affect obviously the whole thermal balance of the planet, man-made interference, 250 patents of weather control, weather modification, and weather weapons, different types of playing around in particle physics with some of the, particle accelerators. Obviously, the CERN project trying to find the God particle. Guess what? He who creates everything, in my opinion, isn't subject to their microscopic, trial and error. And it's interesting that even now, Greg, there's open speaking. It used to just be, oh, those crazy Christians. Now everybody knows they're talking about something big that's coming. It's for instance, let me give you an example. When the resulting tsunami from the earthquake in Fukushima, that was so covered up and covered over that the amount of sea life in the Pacific Ocean was decimated. It didn't matter if you're talking to Inuit Indians up in, in the Arctic Circle, talking to Alaska fishermen, talking to people on the coasts of South America, talking to fishermen. They're seeing fish that were largely warm water fish in their northern waters. You're seeing great white sharks ranging. You're seeing killer whales attacking boats, which usually they don't do. And listen, when everything begins to die in the sea, and this is what's really important, the sea becomes crucial to understanding, and the underwater volcanoes, of which there are millions of them, and I can document it. I have to document everything, and rightly so. But the thing is that the ocean temperatures, listen, the conveyors, the ocean currents, they take that heat generated by the undersea volcanoes and they take it around. It's kind of, if you will, the thermostat that balances the planet. And when things interfere with that, obviously the Arctic, the warm waters are circulated up in the Arctic and down into the Antarctic, okay? And the rotational movement and counter-rotational movement, that's what keeps an equilibrium in the ocean's temperatures and also in the salinity or the saltiness of it.
So what's going to happen to Joe Q Public? What do we need to know?
Well, you better get used to having no seafood, at least fresh. You better get used to paying astronomical prices for the food you have. Back to Martin Armstrong's statement, you better be buying canned food. No kidding, canned food, because it isn't have to be refrigerated. In the prep movement, and again, the preparedness movement, we have life insurance. Most husbands who have wives have life insurance. Some of us have mortgage insurance, have got a mortgage. Some of us have every other kind of insurance. But when it comes to insurance, something bad has to happen. But when it comes to the mindset of, look, preparedness mindset just says this: there are things I don't know, there are things I can't know, there are things that I expect, and there are things that I never expected. But if I can't go to the store, and if I'm quarantined in order to basically only allow me out at specific times, then how does that affect my standard of living? And here's the thing, and in my opinion, America was blessed when it acknowledged the living God. We walked in his ways. Even people who are atheists and agnostics, they benefited from, if you will, a God-centered attitude towards freedom and liberty. It's real simple. God's blessing is based on obedience, but we thought we could do something better. And it's like in the book of Romans, New Testament, men they thought they were so wise, and they started worshiping the creation rather than the creator, God. This is why Jesus said in Matthew 24, and the book of Revelation is talking about, again, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We've got famine, we've got pestilence. Pestilence and plague are the same thing. We have death, and we have war. And what's interesting about that is the pale horse is green, or chloros. So now, I don't know. Do you do shopping with your wife, or do you let her?
Yeah, we both do it. Yes, we both do it.
So are you noticing, where in the part of the country you live, are you noticing empty shelves like people are reporting all over the country?
Yeah, in Walmart, yes, there are empty shelves. I don't know if there's empty grocery store shelves. Somewhat, yes. There's some.
Yeah, this isn't an interrogation.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
no, there's some stress in the whole supply chain. Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and here's what a lot of people are missing. With the restaurants being shut down, especially in New York City, by, in my opinion, communist sympathizing, mayors, and also the whole attitude towards, if you will, rebellion, and also the overthrow of the United States. What is it, 100,000 Businesses, I think I've seen 100,000, 160,000. But here's the deal. On restaurants, 80% of the restaurants in New York City will not and cannot reopen.
Wow.
Here's the killer. Here's what most people, I didn't know this, so I'm telling you from somebody in the food industry. 60% of Americans who worked, past tense, in cities ate out. 60% of the food production in the United States, you name it, potatoes for French fries, cattle for burgers, chicken for chicken cordon bleu or chicken McNuggets, whatever. But that went to that sector of restaurants feeding the people. One of the great things that people used to remark about, obviously, in the United States is America had an abundance of blessing, an abundance of harvest, and an abundance. Most people didn't starve. Great, never, and this is all due to the volcanic, when I say the volcanic eruptions, heating up the ocean, changing the weather, and then the Illuminati, the globalists, and here's something that's important. You've had so many specialist experts, really wealthy guys who understand the economy of the world and the manipulation, whether it's the gold market, the silver market, the stock market, program trading, all the cycles that take place. Well, we're seeing now in the most important thing, without being able to eat, men do funny things. For instance, China cannot feed its entire population right now. How is that? The insect plagues. We've had some of the biggest locust infestations all through China into Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. We've seen absolute decimation of what little food is in Africa. So when you couple that and you add insects, you add the plague. An insect is a plague, well, especially when they're 50 miles wide. These are some of the dimensions of the locust plagues. 25 miles in length and 500 feet, the altitude. There seems to be like a ceiling at 500 feet. Imagine a tsunami of insects eating everything that's green in their path. How do those people feed? How does China feed its population now?
Well, they have their flooding that's unbelievable with the Three Gorges Dam. And that was supposed to be flood control, and they have massive flooding, massive loss of farm grounds, massive loss of...
Absolutely. But here's the thing. The whole presence in the South China Sea with their new islands and their belligerence towards Taiwan, towards Japan, towards the United States, towards the Philippines, they are literally sending out fleets, F-L-E-E-T-S, of thousands of ships, literally fishing everything, taking everything they can get out of the ocean to feed their people.
Wow. And do you think this is the big theme? So we're going to have tsunamis on the East Coast. Is that right? Do you think we'll have tsunamis if the big one over there hits on the western part of Europe and Africa, with that big chunk falling off? Could we have tsunamis on the East Coast?
Yep, we're going to have them on the West Coast too. And the reason why is one of the tallest mountains from ocean level to the top is in Hawaii, and it's called the Hilna, H-I-L-N-A. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but the Hilna Slump, S-L-U-M-P. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm in full-scale film production, interviewing some of the most famous people on, and I'll give it away, but we're going to do an already pre-production on the mega quakes and mega death. Because again, I don't think people can understand what's at stake. You'll only begin to really get it. You and I can talk, and thank you, Greg. This is the ultimate warning. Thank you for having me. I'm telling people, excuse me, so prepare. Martin Armstrong, buy canned food. Buy canned food. Buy canned food.
You're going to have a conference coming up in October, which I talked about at the very beginning of this, or I should have anyway. It's October 16th and 17th. It's called the Final Warning, Brace for Impact, and you have a bunch of people on. Is part of what you're going to be talking about is this whole political upheaval going on? It looks like right now they're going to get a Supreme Court judge. It looks like Joe Biden is really having trouble cognitively, and I don't have to be a doctor to say that. It looks like the radical Marxists, they want to call them socialists, they are a Marxist, globalist, evil incarnate, want to take over America. They look like they're going to lose, and I think they know they're going to lose. That's why all the violence. Are you talking about the political sphere here as well? with your Brace for Impact, final
Absolutely. And let me say this, and also the religious impact. And it goes in, first of all, let me just run through the speakers, because you're one of them. Gerald Celente, Mike Adams, Robert McGinnis, Lieutenant Colonel retired Bob McGinnis, talking about, what's going on in the Pentagon. Lisa Haven, who's one of the most outspoken female podcasters on the internet. We were talking about Brandon Smith, who writes alt market news. This isn't a pitch. Daniel Holdings, one of the most insightful writers out there. He wrote a book called Midnight Strikes, Judgment Unleashed. Dave Hodges and Greg Hunter and Tom Horn. Tom Horn was the only man in the world to talk about the Pope stepping down to the exact day, and he was inundated with everybody in the world. That was the biggest time, the only time Pope had stepped down and been replaced without death. Well, Tom is talking about the whole plan of what's in play now with the secret societies to set up the world for the Antichrist. Antichrist means in place of Christ. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen. You've got one rule, this is what the globalists and elitists want. They want a world religion based on Satan, Luciferism. They want a one world economy based on all digital. And then they want a one world government. And ladies and gentlemen, it's forming before our eyes. The nation states must be overthrown. And so we've got two spheres going on. The right hand is all the global stuff going on with the geology, the volcanoes, the earthquakes, the tsunamis. And then you've got the whole situation on the west coast of America, where you've got so many unique seismic events. And we talked about this on a program, but just so you know, NASA, flew literal thousands upon multiple thousands of flights up and down the west coast into even up to Boise, Idaho. And interestingly enough, they only made 2 flights over Yellowstone, but they're making multiple thousands up and down the Cascadia Range. And with the remote sensing, everything from U-2 spy planes to 747 decked with the most sophisticated, most expensive sensors in the world, mapping the underground magma movement, sensing the vapors. They have sniffers that are so sensitive they can tell literally if there's a specific geyser vent someplace and if it's becoming more active. They're very worried about it. And then you've got the situation with what I told you, axial seamount off the coast of western Oregon, that becomes problematic because they're talking, and some of the smartest scientists that are interviewed on my podcast.
What could happen off the coast of Oregon? What does that mean? What are you talking about?
Well,
what's the danger off the coast of Florida?
Off the coast of Florida?
Off the coast of Oregon.
Oregon. Well, you've got the Juan de Fuca plate, and they're talking about the simultaneous eruption of multiple volcanoes, including the one underwater, axial seamount, and then you're talking about the Philippine plate pushing into the Juan de Fuca. In essence, when volcanoes happen in the Philippines, when massive earthquakes happen, that's pushing upon the North American plate and also the intersecting plates, whether it's the Juan de Fuca off of the western Washington and western Oregon, the coast, and then the Farallon plate, which goes down. All these plates. Well, here's something. The plates, with all that pressure, something has to give. When that happens, there's a Pulitzer Prize winning author that said everything pretty much west of I-5 is gone. Everything.
So you're talking that there's a big quake that could wipe out the West Coast.
Absolutely, and it's not the San Andreas primarily. Everybody's been focused on the San Andreas, even the movie by the name, and that's why I undertook. Listen, it's not a feather in my cap, but it's the truth. Is that, look, we undertook the most extensive and expensive filmmaking venture that's been done on the West Coast in the private sector. Now, obviously, the government spent all the money, but here's what I'm saying. The scientists that we have, the world's experts are on that film. Cascadia, the big one, is really problematic. And most people, look, the West Coast is burning and the terra firma on the earth, but people don't understand that the burning is really significant, and I'm not making light of it. but as deadly and as horrible as that, and something more deadly and more horrible is waiting, and even now showing signs of the big ones, ONES. Some people say 11, some people say 13. We had scientists that said 11, 13 of the United States' most deadly volcanoes and some of the world's most deadly volcanoes, like Mount Shasta, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, Mount Baker, all of these, the three sisters from northern Washington all the way down to Mount Shasta in California.
You're saying they could all go off.
Yep. And that's the basis. So here's what I'm saying.
They could all wait. They could all go off at the same time.
Yes.
What happens if they all go off at the same time?
Well, I guess we have a restructure. I'm not trying to be a wise ass, but I think we have a restructuring of the continental United States as you and I have known it from the geologic boundaries.
Wow.
Even the Navy has, projected maps. What happens when that happens, and then couple it with the New Madrid. Okay. The New Madrid fault is becoming problematic. Obviously, we're seeing more clustering of quakes up and down the New Madrid. I call it New Madrid. Then the people that live there get mad at me and they say Madrid. Well, call it what you want it, but that's problematic.
That's in the center of the country.
That's in the center of the country.
And what about? And so we could be separated. I know we've seen these maps where we could be separated by 200 miles of inland sea.
Right, and that's what. Thank you for making that, because the U.S. Navy has a map. People can look it up on the internet of what the 200 miles of inland sea will look like. Because from the Great Lakes to the Gulf, just imagine this.
Or 100 miles. That's many miles. Go ahead.
Yeah, many miles.
And what happens to the rest of the world? Don't they also go underwater?
Oh, they
also get in trouble.
Yeah, they have their own geologic anomalies. For instance. People don't understand, like Mount Vesuvius in Italy and Mount Etna. And for a long time, people were unaware of the amount of underwater volcanoes there. Let me propose something to you. If there was a 1500, this is really important, and this will affect Europe. If there was a map in 1513 by a Turkish explorer named Piri, P-I-R-I, Reis, R-I-E-S, and 1513 that showed Antarctica completely devoid of ice, how could that be? 1513.
Well, also his map, when they go to modern technology sonar going through the ice, the map is amazingly accurate with 3 miles of ice on it.
Right, but 1513?
Yeah, I know. Some weird stuff.
So,
how did he have that?
Here's the deal.
They've had ice on it for 6,000 years, right?
Yep. But here's the thing, Greg. Those volcanoes, and there's, I think, 132 identified volcanoes underwater in the Antarctic. What happens when they start to erupt simultaneously? Just think Iceland, simultaneous volcanoes erupting, and that amount of melted ice, which turns to water, goes into the ocean. Then think about sea level. Think about Venice and Italy flooding. Think about the high water marks in ancient history and the sedimentation of different places around the world. Look, I believe, and let me just make it clear, I'm not Dr. Doom. This is not doom porn, but I'm saying when you take all the scientists and you see what's happening now in America, and in America, I'm talking about the food. Most people in America would laugh, scoff, and have for 25 years at me when I'm saying America will endure a famine. And I've also said this. The greatest migration in the United States history will take place for fresh water and seeking fresh water. It'll be caused by drought. It'll be caused by fresh water disappearing. It'll be caused by poisoning of the wells. Obviously, sulfur dioxide doesn't make for a good tasting water. Earthquakes will fracture different areas of the aquifers, and you can look up on the internet how many aquifers, the biggest one being the Ogallala Aquifer in the mid-United States. So here's what my passion is, okay? People, if you've got all these insurance policies for everything in your life, how about life assurance where you get to live it? Don't wait to panic. Listen, you don't need to worry about toilet paper. You need to worry about nothing in your stomach that you won't need to use toilet paper.
Yeah. So, And I'm going to go on here to I want to get everything in. Who do you think is going to win? I'm going to get this. I know this seems small compared to what you're talking about, but I'm going to still ask anyway because you're Steve Quayle. Who do you think is going to win the election? Do you think they're going to be able to cheat their way out? Looks like they're going to get. Lindsey Graham is out saying we got the votes. We're going to get.
Yep.
I think it's Coney Barrett who they're going to pick, but who knows? They've got some other good candidates, females. Who do you think is going to win the election, and this is going to end up in the Supreme Court?
I think it's going to end up on the streets of America. I think Trump is going to win. I think it's going to be contested. I think prior to November 4th, we're going to see all hell breaking out. You've got Antifa. I just received today, Greg, an email from people talking. They're in the hotel industry, talking in the area of, the next suspected area that's going to become hot in D.C., putting what they call thugs, even people that don't speak English, and they're talking thugs, they're talking big guys, and they're talking about changing America's history. But guess what? Somebody's putting them into 4- and 5-star hotels. These aren't, I won't make any names of, but these aren't flea joints, okay? And so this lady said, you've got to warn people. And here's the thing.
Warn people about what? About the thugs in Washington?
Yeah, the thugs. Listen,
right now.
Yeah, I'm answering your question specifically.
Okay.
The bottom line is that no revolution takes place without big-time funding. Look at how Harris Faulkner, and I put Harris Faulkner, F-A-U-X, like Fox, false news, stop Newt Gingrich on George Soros. Why is it, and I say this as one of the newsmen that started on cable TV, with CNN and stuff, I mean, how is it that George Soros' name is not spoken? And if you follow the money, the Bolshevik Revolution was funded by Wall Street bankers. Anthony Sutton wrote a great book, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, okay? The bottom line is, why was that such a big deal? It's simple. The press is owned by the globalists, the illuminists, the Luciferians. Even to the point of the vaccine was a push by the Democrats. And then Trump said, well, I'm going to get on it. And now, well, we're not going to take it, Kamala Harris. How is it that Larry Grayful, this is all answering your question, of the Weather Underground 72 said 30 million people have to die. And then Kamala Harris is quoted as saying, hey, we keep lists. We know who is going to disappear. She's quoted as saying that. So I believe Trump will win, but I also believe that it will be the most contested presidential campaign in history. I believe civil war. I'm on record, Greg. I want you to know this. 25 years ago, coast to coast, I said we're going into a civil war. Art Bell, when he was still alive, when I went on first with Coast to Coast, made the statement, well, I sure hope you're wrong. And I said, I wish I were wrong. I won't be wrong. Well, that sounds arrogant to most people. The bottom line is that we no longer have a cohesive nation, one nation under God. Are you kidding me? The United States won't bow before the living God, who's the author and finisher and has blessed us. Look, there's a difference between the country that exists now and the country that existed post-World War II and even after Korea. But the bottom line is that that country is disappearing. You see people that won't even investigate. They will assume that any movement of 3% or less of the population is going to be the motivating force. The reason that's happening is because Republicans, because of Christians, because of people that just don't want to get involved. Well, I'm telling you what, your empty stomach and your kids crying and your wife looking at you with despair because there's nothing for her to make. And look, this is really serious, okay? And the idea that there's a political solution to a spiritual problem is baloney, okay? Baloney. And the thing is that the idea of an orchestrated overthrow by some of the richest billionaires in the world have a design. They want to bring on their Lord, who is the Antichrist, in place of Jesus Christ. The Pope has turned into the false prophet, in my opinion. I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm anti that Pope. The Pope has never, and for the record, he makes his life's ambition to denigrate Christian values and basically uplift, if you will, cultural Marxism. In my opinion, the guy's a Marxist.
Okay?
Oh,
I think he's a Marxist. The Pope is never what? You said the Pope is never what?
Yep.
He's,
so what am?
Well, wait, what's the Pope never done? You said the Pope has never, and you stopped yourself.
I said the Pope has never stood. Thank you. For the Lord Jesus Christ, the inerrancy of the Scripture, that what Catholics believe He does not even see. There's a war going on in Catholic Church. By the way, when I said that 25 years ago, that was very unpopular. I said traditional Catholics that still have a biblical context and still believe the Bible, and Catholics more than Protestants believe in miracles. Okay, and so this Pope is absolutely denigrating Jesus, and now he's telling that the whole world that they can all they can all go to heaven. Okay.
Yeah.
But they don't have to believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, that's contrary to the gospel.
Yeah.
And that's why the war on Christians. Did you ever think, Greg, you'd see the day when you could have I'll be blunt, whorehouses open, but you can't have houses of worship open?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever thought you could have bars and all that stuff? And look, I'm
gambling,
not
casinos open, churches closed.
And then look at this. The
NFL. Lowe's and Home Depot open, churches closed.
Yeah, and somehow germs have developed the political hubris of the left, where they just don't infect. In other words, COVID-19 goes, oh, that guy's a leftist, I'm not going to infect him. Oh, there's a Trump supporter. When you have, at no time in history, when the abomination of desolation, the guy that was present by that name, you did not have multiple murder threats. You did not have the ruler of Iran saying, we're going to kill President Trump. That's in play. You never had the right calling for burning him down, killing his kids. You never had that. Now you've got that. You've got people being killed, murdered, cold blood because they're a Trump supporter. When did that happen? See, the left is only tolerant as long as we're tolerant of ourselves, but of no one else.
Yeah.
I would say this, Greg, that as volcanoes get, and I'm saying this, imagine the temperature of volcanoes raising the ocean temperatures, okay? What you're seeing now, too, is in the political realm, you're seeing volcanic statements starting to melt the thin veneer of civilization, okay? Are you kidding me? You look at what's gone on in Portland. You look at what's gone on in Seattle. You look what's gone on in the land of city of 1,000 fires. That's New York City, soon to be. You look at what's gone on by mayors that are the very population they're supposed to be protecting. They're defunding the police. You know why the police are being defunded, everybody? I said this 25 years ago. It's important you understand this. The plan was to make war between the people and the police, the police and the people, and to interject or introduce, if you will, assassins into police departments to generate ethnic warfare. When Jesus talked about for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Kingdom are countries, but nation against nation, that word's ethnos against ethnos. Obama did the most damage to setting race relations backward. But I thank God for my black brothers and sisters who are absolutely saying, stop it, whether it's Herschel Walker, whether it's a lady running for office in Baltimore. Man, I think she's got the best political ad I have ever seen. And I intend to donate to her campaign because I'm telling you what, that woman is on the march, literally, and you've seen her political campaign, I'm sure. Yeah. It's wonderful. So here's the thing. We either stand up, and speak out. Don't let a bunch of thugs. Now look, this is what people have got to understand. The Democrats are the party of death. They said, we don't want God on our podium. He has nothing to do with this. And I made the statement before it happened. I said, you'll watch, Black Panthers will turn into the Black Muslim movement at some point. Not all of them yet, but they will. And what do we see? We see basically a breakdown in the foundational principles of our country. Equal justice under the law, so there is no justice under the law. You can no longer defend yourself, and the people defending themselves, like that couple in Missouri, And so the white rage, rage against whites. This isn't by all black people any more than white racism against black people is. But what happens is they who control the news control the narrative. And the narrative has been in the Democratic press control. And that's why the alternative news, and we're the only ones that tell what I would call empiric truth. If I tell you that 400 million people are at risk downstream from the Yangtze, and that doesn't make people wonder, well, what happens with all those people when they die? Because it doesn't affect us. But if I tell you, when have you ever seen food lines in America that go for miles? Yep. It go for miles.
That's happening now.
And see, they're starving us into subjection. They're starving us into subjugation. And they're going to kill the people. Look, there's only one thing they can do with the truth, and that's kill it, stop it, or cut it off. And that's why, final warning, brace for impact, that is real. Look, I really believe that's an important title, okay? Title is like, you can't judge a book by a cover, but you can get a whole, I guess, an overview. And by the way, Brandon Smith of altmarket.news, who's been calling this thing, he's one of the youngest guys speaking, he's nailed it so many times. But what you get when you get a collection, the Bible says in the multitude of wisdom, multitude of counselors, there's wisdom. And so this conference is critical. And then go to Gen6, GENSIX.com. And it's my, and I can say this, I do not see the political climate existing if Trump wins or, the whole country goes up next year to do this, because the plan is this. The next 6 months will become the most perilous 6 months, I believe, in United States history. I monitor Russia, I monitor China, I monitor the weapon systems from both countries. North Korea, most people don't even know that Kim Jong-un is got a degree in nuclear physics from Switzerland. He's a very smart man. He's not just some guy that you can dismiss. People don't understand that Japan has been building, and they have the quietest submarines in the world. India is not going to put up with China's crap any longer.
And you think the next 6 months is what? The next 6 months? What's the?
It's going to be the most perilous, perilous time in our country's history.
Wow. Listen, the conference is the October 16th and 17th. It's on the Gen 6, the SteveQuayle.com website. It's October 16th and 17th. It's all virtual. It's final warning, brace for impact. Steve Quayle, I wish you all the luck in the world. The next 6 months, the most perilous in the history of America. Wow. That's quite a prediction.
It is, but it's not a prediction. You're seeing it.
You're right. Again. You're right. You're seeing it right now. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to make another statement. 3 years ago, I hear it in the headlines now, and it didn't exist before our conferences. At the conference 3 years ago, the Gen 6 True Legends Conference, I said, from this conference date, the word normal will never be used again. And I said, every expectation that you've known as normal in the coming months and coming years will change forever. There's no going back to normal. It doesn't exist. I want it to be normal. You want it to be normal. And we're fighting for the lives of people that don't even know necessarily that what's changed. But when you can't eat, when you don't have a job, where you have to depend on $600 a week from the government, where the restaurants you used to eat at, they're closed. They can never open again. 166,000 businesses closed. 166,000. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important time. People say, how can you sleep at night? Simple. I have the peace of the living God. Jesus told me this is going to happen. Jesus told me that we don't have to worry. Matthew 24, Luke 21. But the book of Revelation, great. I'll close with this too. There's more truth in the British press, who are known agnostics and atheists, about biblical terms than there is in all of the U.S. press that's owned and controlled. They hate God, they hate Jesus, they hate Christians, and the persecution against Christians is going to increase to such a degree that you used to think you could worship. You can't. And pretty soon, this is something I said years ago, mark my words, the Bible will be declared an enemy of the state. I don't know if that's 1 year or 2 years, and possession of it will be a capital crime. You mark my words.
Steve Quayle, SteveQuayle.com. The conference, again, is final warning, brace for impact. Final warning, brace for impact, October 16th and 17th. You can sign up for it now. Go to SteveQuayle.com. I'll put a link up for it after the interview section, but you can find Steve Quayle. He's a big shot on the internet. Steve Quayle, thanks for coming on, and very pivotal time for you to come on. I was offering you to come on, closer to your conference. I want to come on now. I want to come on now. Now I understand
Yeah.
why you want to come on now. So I appreciate
Well,
it.
here's the deal, too. The lateness of the hour, the conference is too close. I want people to be warned. And again, kudos, Greg, to having Martin Armstrong on. And the can of soup, that sounds so trivial. But when you understand, it's so smart. Our ancestors had a pioneer spirit. It is a pioneer spirit that settled this country. It is a pioneer, return to the pioneer spirit that will basically be able to resettle what's left of our country.
Yep, a canned food more valuable than gold and silver. Might be right up there with PB. Anyway, thank you so much, Steve Quayle, for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you, Greg.